Welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving straight into a truly fascinating exploration of Eastern philosophy. We're going to unpack some really profound concepts regarding parenting, how we actually identify unseen talent in our kids, and ultimately our grander contribution to society as a whole. So if you're focused on understanding the deeper, sometimes hidden currents of how we guide the next generation, you are in the exact right place. Let's break down some incredibly eye-opening perspectives that are absolutely going to challenge the way you think about the energy we give to others. Okay, let's dive right into this. Think about it for a second. Is giving food the absolute smallest thing a parent can do? I mean, most of us probably think that providing the basics, like feeding our children and keeping them physically safe, is the foundational, maybe even the most vital act of parental care, right? But the source material we're looking at today flips this entirely on its head. It actually argues that merely giving food is the absolute smallest, lowest tier thing a parent can provide. It really challenges us to look way beyond physical sustenance and focus instead on profound intellectual and energetic nourishment.
So, let's look at Section 1, Differences in Mass Given.
Now, to understand why physical food is actually considered pretty minor, we got to look at this crucial concept called mass. And no, we're not talking about physical weight on a scale here. In this philosophy, we're talking about the density of the energy, the wisdom, and the knowledge you pass down to a child. According to this framework, equipping a kid with superior knowledge and deep understanding is giving them the highest mass possible. It is literally the ultimate form of nourishment.
Now, what's really interesting here is the stark contrast. Low-mass parenting, that focuses strictly on the physical stuff, the food, the shelter. But high-mass parenting is a whole different ballgame. It's all about imparting wisdom. Sometimes, this means giving constructive criticism. But incredibly, it can even mean purposeful silence. Think about that. If a parent intentionally stays quiet to give a child the space to figure something out on their own, that thoughtful restraint actually carries an immense amount of mass compared to just, say, handing them a meal. It's all about intentional energy.
And speaking of energy, our source provides this fascinating metaphor about how energy flows within a family. You know how parents will often just dote endlessly on their youngest kid? We usually call that preferential love. But this philosophy suggests something a bit different. It argues that energy naturally flows downward, kind of like water. So it looks like special affection for the youngest is often just the parent's unreleased, unused energy automatically cascading down to the bottom. True love, though, that isn't an automatic cascade. True love requires the highly intentional, focused delivery of high-mass energy.
Moving on to Section 2, Future-Piercing Career Choices.
So how do we actually apply this high-mass energy in the real world? Well, a huge one is how we guide a child's future, and specifically avoiding the trap of popularity. A lot of parents want to push their kids into fields that are currently popular or really lucrative, because let's face it, we all kind of want those bragging rights at the family dinner table. But the text warns that this is a massive miscalculation. If you push a child toward a purely money-driven choice based on today's trends, they are already a step behind. By the time they actually enter that field, the world is going to have moved on. True societal impact, and frankly true visionary parenting, means anticipating what comes after the current trend.
Let's move to the timeline and see how this actually builds across history. In the past, people rushed into the Era 1 light industry, completely convinced it was the peak. Then, boom, heavy industry took over in Era 2. When that became crowded, the IT and computer era emerged as Era 3. If you were busy chasing the popularity of heavy industry, you totally missed the IT boom. So what is the fourth era? The source explicitly points out that the ultimate upcoming paradigm is welfare and social business. Helping society, fixing social imbalances, this is the final grandest industry. A really wise parent with high-mass vision prepares their child to lead in this coming era, not just chase the dying trends of the past.
Which brings us to Section 3, Talent Seen When Known.
But here's the catch. To guide a child into the future, you first have to recognize what they're naturally good at. And this is where so many parents hit a massive roadblock, their own perceptual limits. Let's look at this concept. If I know nothing of art, I cannot see my child's talent in drawing. Imagine a kid squatting in the dirt, just continuously drawing pictures with a stick because the parent hasn't even bought them a basic pencil. The parent looks over and just sees a messy kid playing in the dirt. Why? Because the parent has absolutely no understanding of art. The talent is right there, practically shouting at them, but it goes completely unnoticed by a well-meaning but frankly oblivious parent.
So the absolutely crucial point here is that your own knowledge literally creates the boundary of your perception. If you're totally ignorant about science, you are going to miss your child's scientific genius. If you know nothing of music, you won't hear their musical potential. You just cannot develop a talent in your child that you don't have the vocabulary or understanding to recognize in the first place. Your own lack of mass limits their growth.
All right, Section 4, Wisdom to Fill Gaps. Okay, I know that sounds a bit daunting, right? What do you actually do when you hit the boundary of your own knowledge? Well, the source gives us a really clear roadmap. Step 1, you have to have the humility to acknowledge your own ignorance. You literally have to admit, I just don't know enough to guide my child here. Step 2, you must seek out a knowledgeable expert who actually does have the eyes to see the talent. And step 3, and this is incredibly important in this philosophy, you have to compensate that expert properly, and not just with money, but with profound sincerity.
Think about the difference between a simple transaction and a genuine, sincere exchange. Handing an expert a stack of cash, that's just financial. It's low mass. But remember, the expert is giving your child high mass energy by revealing their future. To balance that equation, you have to return high mass energy. The source uses a really beautiful metaphor for this. It's like offering carefully cultivated, homegrown sweet potatoes or perfectly tended pesticide-free rice. It's all about offering something that is infused with your own time, your own effort, and your deep respect. That is how you truly balance the scale.
This brings us to our final core concept, Section 5, Nature's Law of Energy Exchange.
This idea of balancing the scale goes way, way beyond just paying an expert. It scales all the way up to a grand cosmic level. In this worldview, there's a strict law of nature governing energy called Hu Huan, which translates to a grand backlash. And the idea is pretty simple but severe. As you move through life, you absorb immense energy, infrastructure, and help from society and humanity. If you simply take that energy and fail to return equal value, nature demands a rebalancing. Taking without returning inevitably leads to negative consequences, a backlash, in your own life. You're basically carrying around a massive cosmic debt.
And this brilliantly illustrates our ultimate goal. First off, we have to recognize the immense benefits we've already received from the world. Second, just like paying that expert, we have to realize we cannot repay society merely with money. True repayment requires high mass energy. So how do we actually do that? The source tells us we must solve humanity's unanswered homework. We have to take all that high-mass education and talent we've cultivated over a lifetime and actively use it to solve the incredibly difficult, lingering problems that society hasn't figured out yet. That is how we finally balance our cosmic debt.
Which leaves us with this final, genuinely provocative question to think about. We've talked about the energy we give our children, the limits of our own perception, and the natural laws of exchange. But zooming all the way out, looking at the immense mass of energy society has poured into you, how will you use your unique talents to solve humanity's unanswered homework? How will you repay your debt? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this journey has sparked some incredible curiosity for you today, and I highly encourage you to keep exploring.